Is Ubuntu 5.10 the best operating system mankind has ever made? This is a very fair question to ask. Why did I choose Ubuntu 5.10 as part of this ongoing competition of operating system greatness? Well, it is simple. If you look at the history of Ubuntu, Ubuntu went from nothing, from a non-existent fork of Debian, not even a fork, just a respin, a refiddling, if you will, of Debian into a mammoth powerhouse within the Linux and broader computing world, seemingly almost overnight. And that happened right about the release of Ubuntu 5.10. Now, I thought, since that version is the version that really catapulted Ubuntu into the limelight. I mean, if you look at the statistics of when did Google search results start saying, oh my gosh, everyone's searching for Ubuntu. When did DistroWatch, for those of you who don't know, distrowatch.com is this website that basically just tracks relevant interest on DistroWatch for any given operating system, for any given Linux distribution. So they have like 500 or so Linux distributions there, and they track it's really unscientific, but they track how many people are going to the pages for that distro, and then you can compare them to the other distributions, and you can see over time, and you can look back historically and see, well, when did the popularity on that website for that distribution climb? And it's horrible because it's one of the few ways we have to really gauge interest in distributions relative to other Linux distributions. It's super unscientific, and a lot of that problem with that comes from the fact that most Linux distributions don't really track their users, which is a good thing, which is a great thing, but it also means we don't have a lot of details about how many people are using any given release of Linux. Linux, typically you don't go down to Best Buy or Fry's or wherever and buy Linux in a box off the shelf. We used to buy Red Hat and SUSE and the like off of, and Mandrake off of boxes in the store shelves. I bought a copy of SUSE at a Circuit City in 1990 something or other, and it was fantastic. I loved it. But you don't really do that anymore, so it's really hard to gauge how many people are using a distro. But what we can say is this: interest in Ubuntu skyrocketed around the release of 5.10. So let's look at this. How well does Ubuntu 5.10 stand the test of time? How enjoyable is it? How well polished is it? How long lasting and wonderful is it? And how does that compare against all the other operating systems that we're looking at in this little competition, this best OS ever competition of ours? Currently, MS-DOS 6.22 is the reigning champion, with Windows 3.1, Windows for Workgroups slowly right on its tail, about 2 points behind. Can Ubuntu 5.10 beat MS-DOS 6.22? This is not a matchup that I thought we would ever be comparing against. And it amuses me greatly. But here we are. So this is Ubuntu 5.10 here. You can see this right here. I'm actually just booting from the live CD. This was back before they just shipped an ISO intended for putting on a flash drive. This is back when they wanted to make sure all the ISOs for installing it were less than, the 700 megabytes of a large CD, and so you could put it on a CD-ROM. And this is what it looked like. It was very brown. It was very orange. And oops, hold on a second here. There we go. Whoops, come here. There we go. My mouse was freaking out here. This is what it looked like. And it honestly is a very straightforward system. It's fast. Everything loads quickly. It's based on GNOME 2. For those of you, before you yell at me, GNOME is not pronounced GNOME, despite what everyone who works on the GNOME project says. GNOME is a word, a gnome. You don't say, look, there's a garden GNOME. No, it's GNOME. In fact, the GNOME project uses the foot of a gnome as a logo. It doesn't use the foot of a gnome because that is not a real thing. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to get yelled at a lot for this episode. And I'm not 100% sure why, but I know it's going to happen. But everything in this system works quickly. Like here's OpenOffice. This is back before, we got LibreOffice. Back before that was really going to be a thing. And it's fast. It's a fast system. It works really, really well. It's blazing fast. Let's go ahead and open up a terminal here. And let's see it on top. So this is top. This is what's running. I don't think I have htop installed on here, and I don't think I can install htop here. Let's see if htop's on here. Nope, just top. All right, so this is how much memory we've got. We're using 700 megs of memory, and honestly, I think realistically some of that's just reserved at this point. But let's see if we got stuff in the system monitor here. Resources. There we go. This is more like it. Okay, user memory used. Right, not counting the stuff that's simply reserved, we're using about 124 megabytes of RAM. Now, compare that to modern Linux distributions, and it is a night and day difference. Modern Linux distributions tend to run 500, 600, 700, 800 megabytes of RAM in use with a default desktop environment. Here we're looking at 124.3. It's a small enough number that we include the first decimal point because that is significant. And that's very, very fancy. Also, the CPU is running at 0% load. I like that. And this was back when Ubuntu shipped with a metric ton of little tiny games. For real. I mean, just so many little dinky tiny games. It doesn't do that anymore. I mean, some of them were pretty good. Like this version of I'll Write Solitaire was fantastic. It was a good little solitaire package. Here, let's bring up this old version of Firefox. Man, that loaded fast. Firefox version 1.0.7. Coming out in 2005. Holy smokes. Here, let's go ahead and go like this, and let's go to lunduke.com. Yeah, baby. Oh, look what website renders perfectly. It's lunduke.com. Such a simple little website. It works quite well. But here's the thing. It's a fast system. It's a lightweight system. Everything is pretty easy to use. Everything looks okay. Some of it looks quite nice. Some of it looks a little less nice than other parts. But some of it looks really, really quite nice. It's pleasant. It's easy to figure out how to use. It comes out of the gate with, well, just about everything you need. GIMP for image editing. Again, loads up really, really blazingly fast. But here's the problem. Here's the big problem that we run into with these sorts of systems. Let's go down here to administration, and let's open up our package manager. All right. Now here's our package manager, right? This is where we install new pieces of software in this version of Ubuntu. They also had, hold on, this one here, this little add applications thing. Oh yeah, can't get exclusive lock. Well, here's the problem. Let's reload and refresh here. Oh no, could not download all repository indexes. That is because the online repositories for Ubuntu 5.10 are all offline. They died and got killed off many years ago. It's ridiculous, which means that you can't really install anything. So like, let's just say here's AbiWord. I want to install AbiWord. Mark AbiWord for installation. Yes, mark it. All right, now let's apply. Go ahead. Yes, that looks good. Apply. Downloading files. Oh, can't fetch it. 404 not found. Oh, so sad because you can't install new software on this system using the built-in mechanisms. Now it's Linux. It's all free software. It's all open source, which is great, which means that we can compile new things on this system. That means if we can find old Debian packages or even old tar archives for this system, we can possibly get it up and running, assuming we can find all of the various dependencies of any given application. But that is a huge amount of work, and all of those application repositories are offline, and so they're just gone. So getting this base system up and running is easy. It runs great. It loads up quickly. It's fantastic. Oh my gosh, I love that. All right, let's load up this. Skip this step. Apply. Okay. So I can load up the music player and it works. It works great. And I can connect to the internet and use Firefox version 1. Which I gotta admit, I like a lot more than the current version of Firefox. Oh, holy smokes, do I ever. But you just can't get new software for it. You can't get new drivers for this system unless you compile them yourself, which is great that it's possible. But the fact that it's really, really hard to do for the average users means that we've got a system here that, granted, at this point is nearly 14 years old. This came out in 2005, and we are sitting here in 2019. I almost said 1980. I was like, no, that's the wrong year. That's the wrong year, ladies and gentlemen. And we can't get anything going on it. And this is basically, it's not just not supported anymore, it's hobbled. And this is a problem when you've got an operating system that is tied where the basic core functionality of the operating system, such as the ability to install software, is hobbled such that you cannot do it in the future unless the specific company and organization that made it continues to keep those services running at the exact same internet address for infinity time. There is always going to be an end of life to it. And it's for a decent reason. I mean, if we're going to say we want to be able to have online software stores and package repositories, that necessarily has that problem. You have that problem, and there's no way around that problem. It is by design that this system will be end-of-lifed as soon as those servers come offline. And that's a major bummer. Now, in theory, someone could take the entire Ubuntu 15.10 repositories, package them up, put them on a different set of servers, because a Debian repository is really just a real simple HTTP server with a very specific directory structure, right? So they could prop it up on an HTTP server and point us at it and say, everyone who has Ubuntu 15.10, go in and in your settings, change the URLs from pointing to Ubuntu.com servers over to, Lunduke's original Ubuntu.com servers or something like that. And then that would continue to work. But very few people are going to do that. And it's a real pain. And I looked around and I couldn't find a mirror of these repositories anywhere, which meant I wanted to come in here and be like, okay, well, first things I do when I load up a system is I begin installing various emulators, PC emulators, DOSBox, and those sorts of things. I install extra web browsers. I install all sorts of stuff. And I can't do any of that right here. Now, if I go to various websites, in some cases, they continue to provide .debs for older versions of Debian and Ubuntu. In some cases. But a lot of times, those will be dependent on things from the repository being installed, various libraries, various other tools and applications, various drivers, and those are impossible to get at this point, or at least functionally impossible. But this still is a fairly enjoyable system to use. I mean, look at it. We got Game Internet Messenger. This is for AOL Instant Messenger. How awesome is that? That's back when we had this. All right. And then, of course, we've got, look, we can do a little Jabber, a little MSN, a Napster, a Yahoo, a GroupWise, Gadu. Holy smokes. I forgot this little piece of software existed. Let's close this out. What else is in here? Oh, this is great. I love, too, at the top, in the places, it automatically is like, you got a CD-ROM. Click on the CD-ROM. I like that. I mean, it's old-timey. All right, we got standard stuff here. We'll just load up a text editor just to see how fast it loads, and it loads instantly. Cool. And it really doesn't look functionally all that different. One of the things that, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but if you open the calculator, it instantly loads up. Modern Gnome Calculator on crazy psycho fast processors takes a couple seconds to load. That's not a joke. Try it. If you're on a modern version of Gnome, load the calculator and time it. And here, and then go back and look at the video and see how fast this one loads up. It's crazy the difference, and there's really no functional difference between them. It's absolutely insane to me. Look at this. Under the system tools, it comes with a floppy formatter. Yeah, baby. Let's load that up. Oh, cannot initialize device. Bummer. Oh, that's a bummer. Oh, well, what can you do? What can you do? If you can't initialize the device, you can't initialize the device. And look, the same, the add application's there, but it doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all. And, you know, it's here. The system works, but it's hobbled. And that kind of stinks. That just kind of stinks. So what do I give this? What do I give this system? It's fast, it's responsive, it's actually pretty well designed. The UI is pleasant to use. It's got some kinks in a few spots where the stock GNOME 2 interface was changed just ever so slightly, and even then there was some polishing issues that could have been there, but overall it's really quite nice. I really enjoy using that. But the inability to install new software kind of puts a dampening on the fun I can have. And the thing is, all the applications, all the operating systems, I mean, that I've reviewed in this Best OS collection so far, you've had to download and use installers or have floppies or CDs with installers for the software to put them on the system. And so you could say, well, this just takes Ubuntu and puts it on the same level as those other systems. Unfortunately, very few people distributed Linux software that way. They put it in the repositories. And so when the repositories came offline, it effectively nuked the applications, right? They just weren't there anymore. People didn't by default have an installer. Not usually. Sometimes, but not usually. And people provided tars for their application, little tar archives for applications. But then, even then, you tended to need other dependencies that weren't included in that because they assumed you had access to the repositories. Whereas the other systems, they never assumed you had access to any sort of crazy, fangled online repository. You just, here's your system. And then whatever piece of software you wanted to install assumed that you had a base system, and if it needed other dependencies, it had to provide them for you in an installer or an extra package or just sitting as a binary on the floppy, right? So that's a real shot to the face of Ubuntu 5.10. It's a good system, but its immortality is almost nil by comparison to what it could be because of that. It's all open source, so we can modify it. We can modify it to run on new hardware, which is amazing and adds new breath to the possible immortality of such a system. But again, no repositories, it's all offline. That said, the fact that it's all open sourcey gives it a lot of extra kudos for me. That's a big deal for me. So what do I give this? What do I give this? And does it beat MS-DOS 6.22, which I think came in at 36 points or something like that? It came in at 30 points. Oh, yes, it did. Yes, it did. I gave it a 7 out of in enjoyability because it is enjoyable. Yeah, MS-DOS right there at 36 points. I gave it a 7 out of 10 for polish because, honestly, it's a fairly well-polished system, but it's got some rough edges, especially when you aren't online. If you are not online, things do not fail terribly gracefully. It gives cryptic error messages. It gives annoying little lockups. If you're not an online system using old Ubuntu 5.10, it has problems. So I had to knock it some for the polish there. For immortality, I gave it a 3 out of 10. I gave it 3 points because it's open source. Otherwise, I would have given it 0. Because the requirement of being connected to the internet made it so it can't be that immortal. It can't. Now, if this was a system, it's interesting because if you really sit back and think about it, there are Linux distributions out there that ship with huge software collections on thumb drives and DVDs and the like. If you used to buy Red Hat or Mandrake or SUSE or even Slackware, you'd get CDs, sometimes many CDs, filled with requirements and software. And when you went into the software repositories, the package managers, it would just simply ask you to put in the right CDs, right, to get the right packages. So you could still maintain that operating system perpetually into the future. Ubuntu didn't do that. So I had to knock it a bunch out of that. Now, importance, I gave it a 5 out of 10. And my logic here was this, is for Ubuntu and Linux, this was an important release. Ubuntu 5.10 dramatically shifted the entire Linux marketplace. It became overnight almost the most popular, at least in the public's eye, version of Linux. And that cannot be downplayed. It was amazing. However, in the broader computer scheme of things, this particular version of Ubuntu has long since been forgotten. And then I gave it an 8 out of 10 for the wild card, simply because A, fond memories, and B, fully open, at least with a couple of binary drivers here and there, but otherwise all open and free software, which is pretty doggone great. So I give it a 30 out of 50. Which means it is just a slight hair above OS2 Warp 4 for being the lowest scored operating system so far, and 6 full points below MS-DOS 6.22. I'm going to get so yelled at. And this episode of The Lunduke Show is brought to you by Lulzbot 3D printers. Go to lulzbot.com and check out their 3D printers. They are absolutely fantastical. I don't know what else to say about that, but they are literally the best 3D printers that you can get out there. Look at that Lulzbot Taz Pro. It's huge and amazing. I don't have one of those. I've got a Lulzbot Mini and a Lulzbot Taz 6, and it's just fantastic. And if you want to get this show other places other than YouTube or wherever you're getting it currently, you go to lunduke.com. There's a bunch of links, iTunes and RSS feeds and all that sort of thing. And of course, you can check it out over on library. If you go to beta.lbry.tv or load up the library application, you can get the DRM-free MP4 downloaded straight to your thingamadoodles that you're running on your Doozawutsits. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm seriously going to get yelled at a lot for this episode. Tune in next time when I review another operating system people love and then get yelled at about it. See you guys later.